live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this lunchtime live from Leeds Fashion Futures, which of course is Zero Waste Leeds project with the RSA, looking at how we can have a more sustainable approach to fashion on a city level and what we need to do to make that happen. Today, we're talking about purchasing power. How can we as consumers use the power that we've got to create jobs and restore our textile pride? But before we do, I'm Peg Alexander, Leeds-based journalist and presenter, person who cares about fashion and cares about making our city a zero-waste city. But on to our guest today. Well, we've got Jenny Whisker from Community Clothing, which was set up by the great British sewing bees Patrick Grant. Now, Community Clothing is a social enterprise with a simple goal: to sell great quality, affordable clothes, and by doing so, create great jobs and help restore economic prosperity in some of the UK's most deprived areas. It's a clothing company with a business model that's totally different to other fashion brands. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here and have some time to talk about clothes. My
I
favorite.
know, well, it's great.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. We also, of course, as always, have the very lovely Jill Copeland from Zero Waste Leeds joining us. And Jill, just to say, if anybody asks, your picture isn't wonky behind you, is it?
It's not to me. So yeah, it's a bit strange that I did it, but.
So just to say, we already have got people watching us, which is really nice. Join in the conversation. I'm monitoring the chat. Get your questions, get your thoughts, put your comments in, just join in the conversation. Let's get going. Jenny, let's start with kind of explaining to us a bit about what community clothing is and how it works, what this model is that's really different.
Well, why it's different is community clothing is very much focused on creating jobs and people, and is much about providing quality, affordable clothes, really the top of the range quality. But in doing so, it creates jobs, particularly in some of the UK's most deprived textile regions. So as manufacturing declined over the last few years, so did jobs in these areas. And community clothing was set up by Patrick Grant to help these areas. And also for people like ourselves, I was a consumer of community clothing first, to be able to go to a brand that wasn't about fast fashion, that was about people, that was about sustainability and making conscious choices about what we wear, how we spend our money, and that when people come to a brand like community clothing, they can be sure that the people that work in the factories are treated very well, that we take concerns about the environment seriously, and that you're going to buy clothing that's made in the UK and that's made to last. So the community clothing is made here, it's made well, and it's made to last.
And there's a different arrangement with the factories, isn't there?
Yeah, fast fashion works very much on the basis you have very busy seasons, and then you have a drop in work that comes in. And in those those quiet times, often a lot of factories have to let people go. So the community clothing model is different. In what it does is it makes items that can be made all year round staples. So it's not dependent on these cycles of fast fashion in these seasons. And in that way, the clothing is made when the factory has spare capacity. So instead of a really busy period and then people being let go and then another busy period, these factories that we work with around the UK, when they have spare capacity, that's when they make the items that goes into community clothing. And I also have to say a special word of thanks and congratulations to the manufacturers who have continued to operate in the last year under extraordinary circumstances. Yeah. And Patrick's own factory, Cookson and Clegg, where I'm sitting now in Blackburn, the workers here have worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic. The community clothing, actually, our own production dropped hugely last year because all the factory workers in Cookson and Clegg were all making PPE. So they were making face masks and snoods and more recently scrubs for different centres. And for me personally, it was amazing to walk through the factory and know if community clothing was about profit, that wouldn't have happened. They would have kept, stocking up on community clothing. But anyone who knows Patrick Grant knows he's a real champion of British manufacturing. And in a time where this country said, we need scrubs, we need face masks, we need PPE. He stood up and the people in his factory stood and said, okay, we're here, we'll do it. And they got to work, and they delivered extraordinary quality scrubs. Some of the nurses who received the scrubs, because this factory is so used to making designer, really high quality stuff, they said they were the best scrubs they'd ever got, because they were made to that very high standard.
You know, I think that's a really interesting thing, isn't it, Jill? That, you know, we don't necessarily think of factory workers as being key workers, essential workers that have kept us going through this, have we?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting about what you just said there, Jenny, is it's like the founding principles of the business, isn't it? So it couldn't contrast more with fast fashion, which is all about getting thousands, millions of pieces out of the door, tiny margins, and it's all about profit. And this kind of amazing thing happens when the foundation and principles of the business are about fairness and sustainability and taking care of your staff and quality and British manufacturing. They're just, it's polar opposite, isn't it? And it's just really interesting. And obviously all of that good stuff, the creating the PP and the making the mask, obviously that flows from those founding principles.
Completely. And it's just right place, right time that I ended up here, because I'm freelance in communications, similar to Peg. And I heard an interview with Patrick talking about them, you know, making PPE. He'd just come up from London because of the lockdown, or the general manager of the factory had to be furloughed because he was in Ireland. And he was like, well, if anyone can come and help. So I came here to pack boxes. You know, I was like, okay, I'll trim scrubs. I'll do, you know, whatever I need to do, pack boxes. And I was just so pleased to meet the people. And the other thing about the model of community clothing is it's good quality utility staples. So there's not, because developing garments there's a lot of cost involved in that. Any new product that we put on the market, it will have gone through lots of different, you know, not just quality checks, but wear checks, and that takes time. So if you're constantly changing your styles and what you do, that all adds to the cost, and that makes it go higher and higher. So we've become a very lean operation, so that we're not making loads of different items that it's just, oh, this is in this season. We're confident that any of the items that you buy from community clothing will be good quality staples.
Yeah, like you've got hoodies and you've got kind
absolutely, yeah, like the one behind me, like,
and that sort of thing.
The jersey sweatshirt that's behind me, like I'm confident that in 20 years' time that will still be washing well and comfortable. And it's about, I love one of the phrases Patrick used, it's about the clothes being worn in, not wearing out. That which each time you wear them and wash them and use them, it builds on the story of that clothing and your understanding of the work that goes into that clothing. And I know it's something we've spoken about often at Zero Waste Leeds before as well, that being ethical can be quite difficult. And sometimes it is very hard to know who to understand. There's some of our audience might not be familiar with the phrases greenwashing or trust washing, but it's when companies are very clever about the wording that they use to make themselves sound like they're green, to make themselves sound like they're ethical, or you can trust the brand. And that's not entirely true some of the time. So I think as well, it's as a community clothing is happy to answer questions from people, and we're, you know, people challenge us at times and say, how can you say £50 is affordable for a hoodie? But that is the true cost of making a hoodie in the UK. Yeah, this one that you've made earlier, I can see Peg stepping out. But that is what it costs. So if it's not so much that £50 for a hoodie is expensive, because it's not, we see that as affordable, as the true cost. And because we don't have any big marketing budgets and we go direct to consumer, we cut out all those additional costs. So in other companies, you know, you'd be looking at that same hoodie that we make and it could be £150 because there is that huge markup. And we make it very clear that we rely on our customers to spread the word about who we are and what we do. And my gosh, do they passionately, which is wonderful because they do feel engaged with the story. last year, the reaction, it could have gone both ways when we said to customers, look, we're going to be short on stock for a few months because these workers are making PPE. And we didn't get one negative comment because people were saying that's absolutely amazing. And also it's really shone a light on the importance of British manufacturing, of making stuff in the UK, and the contribution that these people make to the economy as well.
When you have a story like...
Sorry, I had to just pop off there. The broadband engineer decided to turn up exactly, obviously at the moment at which we'd gone live. I just was going to say one thing, that there's I've ummed and ahed about on these things whether to share this story, but I think I will do, because one of the things for me is that the other side of that as well is that just because something's expensive doesn't actually mean that it is ethical.
Absolutely.
And
or good quality. Or good quality,
and that is a difficult thing. And you know, this is a story that's it's over, oh god, I know it's 30 years old now, this story. Oh my god, that is really aging me. But many years ago, I ran a national organisation that was looking at the rights of industrial home workers, industrial piece workers, women, and they were women who were making things, predominantly clothes, but not all clothes, making and packing things at home. And I remember one woman telling me about, she was packing tights. Loads of the tights were put in the packets. You know, when you get the tights in packets in those days, I've no idea if it's done now, but in those days they would get the tights out of a bag and smooth them out, put them round, you know, put the cardboard in, and put them in the packet and sellotape up the packet. And from memory, I think it was about 20 pence an hour, something like that, which at the time was still dreadful that people were earning for this. And I remember one woman telling me that she was delivered a bag of tights, and half of the tights went in a major supermarket's packaging, and the other half of the tights went in an exceptionally expensive store packaging, and they were the same tights.
You can absolutely be conned into that. I don't know whether you remember, Peg, remember we chatted with Dr. Mark Sumner from Leeds University, and they'd done some testing of, I think it was like a plain black t-shirt, and they'd taken t-shirts from very expensive designer brands to very cheap brands, and it absolutely was not true that the more you paid, the better quality you got. So you can be sucked into that, like you can with Jenny's point about the greenwashing. You know, you can be sucked into thinking that some companies are being very ethical, but actually it's just very clever messaging. That we sort of fall for, and we feel we're doing the right thing. And actually, if you look quite deeply, you will find that they're just tinkering around the edges. Whereas an organisation like Community Clothing, it is absolutely at the heart of what they do, and that's the difference.
Completely.
Well, it's because it's set up to be the social enterprise. As I say, it's not.
And I should explain my own background, why I'm personally so passionate about this. I mean, textiles feels like it's just in my blood. My dad had a jeans factory in Oldham, two of them at one stage in the 80s and the 90s. And I watched as he had to close that factory down, and that production had to move abroad, and he had to let hundreds of people know that they were out of work. And that was absolutely devastating. And the pressure that he was put on from buyers in the UK to cut margins, to cut the cost. And so that cost has to come from somewhere. And going further back a generation, my hometown in Athlone, the very centre of Ireland, it's based on the River Shannon, and there were cotton mills along the river and textile production factories, and also a big factory called the Apparel that made sheets and towels. So it was really central to the community in Athlone and a huge employer. And in the 80s, when the Depression came and as that manufacturing moved abroad, it absolutely decimated the town. I mean, the suicide rates, the depression, I know that was across, you know, so many different places. So that manufacturing, there is still manufacturing in Ireland. It's tech and pharmaceuticals in Ireland. But in the UK, there still is an opportunity to save these skills. There still is an opportunity to restore pride to these regions. there still is an opportunity to acknowledge the skills that these people have. You know, like I look at this sweatshirt, and I know that, you know, Amelia was involved in product development. I know Sandy cut it on the table. I know Lumi who put it together. I watched it on the floor. And to know and understand the stories of these people and what they've all gone through in the last year, and seeing them show up for work every day. They really are passionate about what they do. And us as consumers, it's not about, you know, spending huge amounts of money on brands that are claiming to be ethical. It's about the little things. It's about changing your behavior and realizing that every pound you spend has the power to influence really big companies, or where you spend your money, you can support the brands that are trying to do right. So as we're trying to come out of Brexit, is a challenge for all of us. The pandemic is an unbelievable challenge for all of us. People who have been made redundant, people who are coming back into work, we're very conscious of the value of our money, of, you know, being careful with our money. So I would really encourage people to consciously think, where are they spending their money? And instead of just mindlessly buying clothes that you're going to wear once, or a summer dress that you wear for a week and that's it, think about investing in clothing. Think about investing in pieces that should last you a lifetime. And I know it's something you're very personally passionate about, Peg, because I know you shop in charity shops as well, is understanding the value of clothes and also how to look after them. If you look after clothes better, they will last longer. And I know that sounds like stating the obvious, but we've got so used to wear a few times, throw away. I mean, I know people who won't even iron something. Like, they will buy it new and think, oh, well, I'm not going to iron it.
Though, I'm with people on ironing. Let's get this one out there. I'm with people. I don't iron anything. But I'm lucky. I have big wardrobes where I live. I deliberately live in a 70s flat, right? Because they've got loads of wardrobes.
Yeah.
I have big wardrobes, which means I hang everything up. So I don't. So, you know.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. So you're saving yourself a job. You're not ironing it. And by not ironing it, you are making your clothing last longer. It's a bit like one of our most popular posts recently was, I just put some stuff out on the line in the middle of winter. I didn't wash them, but I'd cooked in them and they all smelled of the cooking smells, but they weren't dirty. And we've kind of got this habit of just sling everything in the wash basket. Yeah. And all I did was peg it outside, and everybody loved the post. It's as simple as that.
Do you know what? People loved that post so much that I then used it on a training session that I was running for people about using social media for organisations. And we had a long discussion about your post because it was really human and it was really real, and it got people thinking, and it was perfect.
And it's just a simple thing that you can do. And sometimes you just need to flip that switch with people thinking, why do I just, before I get in the shower in the evening, sling everything in the washer? Why do I do that? Just like a habit thing. So get out of that habit.
That feeds into the environment. We wash more clothes, and that takes up more water. And you know, it's one thing I'm really working on with my 7-year-old daughter at the moment is I concentrate on little themes, and at the moment I'm talking to her about washing clothes, you know, about the production, and also anything that we consume in the house. She loves magazines, absolutely loves them, but they always come with plastic tat. And I'm trying to teach her about anything that we bring into the house. We don't want to be wasteful. We want to think about the resources that are involved. And when I'm talking to her about clothing, I talk to her about, you know, I explain to her what cotton is, and that's natural. And I recently had a conversation with her where I had to explain to her that a lot of these throwaway clothing are actually plastic, and they won't last for a very long time, and you won't be able to pass them on. And introducing these concepts, because a lot of people who can be very diligent about recycling will regularly buy pretty much plastic clothing, and they don't see the connection. So those more the kind of natural products are important. And we, you know, our models that we use are smiling. So I'm in the middle of preparation for a photo shoot at the moment, which is always crazy busy. But our models aren't ever professional models. They're all people who wear our clothes. And if you go on our Instagram feed on community clothing, you'll see so many people, like the love that people have of our stripy socks, and everyone wants to talk about it. And I'm so pleased. I love when someone says, I've washed these socks 10 times and they're perfect. That's what I love to hear. And equally, every now and again, like any production run, you might have someone said, oh, there was an issue with this, an issue with this. It's about building a relationship with your customers where they can ask you questions, and sometimes tough questions, and you have to, you know, be willing to answer that. But it's about a conversation. And if you do have the time every now and again to send an email to a brand and say, what does that really mean? When you say you're green, what does that really mean? When you know, where are your clothes sourced from? That it's not just a box ticking exercise. It's really about the people that are involved. And we use a local supply chain as well. Like the yarns for this particular sweatshirt came from Portugal, but it was knitted in Leicester. It was dyed in another factory in the UK, and then it was brought here. So you're trying to build relationships with these factories so they don't get a glut of orders and then they're gone. It's like anything. If you can be consistent and know what's coming in, you can plan for that and you can be more efficient. That helps the people and it helps the environment. And it also helps people that you're trying to attract into the industry, that there's longevity in their career, because it takes a long time to learn how to cut patterns out, you know, on a scale, like on an industrial scale, and to be a qualified machinist. I mean, Peg, you sew, you know, there's a great deal of skill involved in it. Not anyone can just, and also patience, and you have to have a certain aptitude to be able to sit down at a machine, and the personal pride everyone here takes in what they do is amazing. And when we put anything up on the community clothing Facebook pages or any of our social media, it's often the workers in the factory that are the first to like it, because they're so proud of it.
It's where all the way along the line, it's people, isn't it? So it's the people who are involved in the whole production and manufacturing, and then also it's the people at the end who buy this stuff. And that I'm really interested in. I think a lot of people don't understand how their choices make a difference. And also, you talked before about people being very tuned into, you know, recycling. So we know we should do that. We know how to do it. And it's helped because there's recycling bins delivered to our house and picked up every couple of weeks. But people don't apply the same to their clothing choices, and they don't realize how important those choices are. And also, not once you are tuned into that, once you sort of tune into your own values, that drives your choices. So you make different choices, you know, like maybe buying more secondhand or whatever. And then once you're doing that, what I'm also interested in is not underestimating your influence on everyone around you, because you start doing it and talking about it, and suddenly you can flick the switch with a friend or a family member who thinks, oh, actually, yes, I get that now. That's why I should do that. Buy from an ethical brand if I can afford to, or go.
And Jill, just remind us, if you can remember off the top of the head, those stats are actually about the contribution of clothing to carbon emissions, and also about how much we throw away in Leeds, because they're really shocking, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So there's about 4,000 tons of textiles end up in the black bins in Leeds every year, which is massive. And we've got some videos going out next week, I think, that it's because a lot of clothing doesn't weigh very much. So that is actually, it's a lot, and it's a lot per household. And that's another really simple thing that people can understand. And when we produced our map of all the textile banks, that's another thing that's been really well received. People don't understand what to do. You know, like I didn't know until we started doing this research a couple of years ago that you can collect your odd socks and it's all right to put them in the textile bank. I know a lot of textile banks like put you off doing that because they want the best quality stuff, but it's fine. You can gather all your odd socks up that you haven't, there's a hole in one or whatever, and they can go to the textile bank. So it's not just about how you buy and how you look after your clothes, but how you pass them on and dispose of them responsibly when they're absolutely at the end of their life, because they can go on to be something else. And as soon as people understand that, they're really willing to do that. There are textile banks all around our city, and we need to be, you know, we need to be using them.
And I think
that's the other thing that's come through these talks very much is that clothing is one of the areas where individual purchase power, individual consumer action is actually at the heart of making the change. You know, unlike other parts of the climate discussion, you know, aviation or those things where, you know, yes, individual decisions are part of it, but not necessarily quite as central and crucial as with clothing, because they just have individual consumers. Do you know what I mean? We really can make.
And also for people to understand, this is not, the most important thing you can do is value the clothes that you have in your wardrobe right now. You know, I'm very proud to be part of a clothing brand that promotes lower consumption. You know, we don't do sales, we don't do discounts. We're not saying buy now, get an offer. Do you need it? Great, buy it. It's not about buying in quantity. And I know it can be daunting for people and thinking, oh gosh, and I do have plastic clothes in my wardrobe, and I you know, I do have loads of stuff. Hang on to it. We're not saying get rid of all of that and start again, but by, you know, that, because I think people, it can feel very daunting. This could take you a matter of years to implement in your wardrobe. I personally, over the last 2 to 3 years, made a decision that anything that I look at in my wardrobe, I want to be happy of the story of that garment, where it came from. And not all of those are, you know, expensive, ethical brands, but there were stuff that I had bought before I was more aware of my purchasing power. And gradually now I'm building up piece by piece what I, you know, what of a wardrobe that I'm proud of, and that I think, yeah, I understand where that comes from. I understand that impact, and I value that piece of clothing. And the clothing are reflective of who we are. I mean, I know, Peg, you've spoken about that a lot. It's our way of showing who we are and what we, you know, our beliefs. And when we're able to talk to people about, yes, I choose to buy here because I believe in what they do, like you both said, that enthusiasm spreads and people start to think, yeah, that's great. And the main thing I want to get across is, you know, if it is daunting, we're not saying make all these massive changes now. If you ask one clothing brand a question, if you ask someone in a shop, where does this come from? And they constantly get asked that filters back and that filters up, and people start to ask more questions about it. And I think that's a really important part of purchasing decisions as well, as asking the questions.
Yeah, but going back to where you started on that, because I know that's a quote I've seen you use quite a few times, Jill, and I love it. The most sustainable item of clothing is the one you already own.
Completely.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a discussion, didn't we, the other day with Abigail and Morag from Worn Workshop, and it was really interesting because I didn't realize how attached I was to the things that were already in my wardrobe. But when you open your wardrobe and start thinking about it, where I bought it from, where or who gave it to me, and where I wore it and what I was doing, you know, the wardrobes. They do tell a story. The wardrobes tell a story, and it is worth doing that. And
just to remind people of watching, what they said was open your wardrobe and have pull out the clothes and just think, what is the story of this particular t-shirt or this particular jumper?
Yeah, because I think if you have that relationship with your clothing more, you're bound to look after it. You're bound to value it more. You're bound to look after it better. You're bound to, even wearing it more. So there's, you know, not buying as much, buying well, and wearing your stuff more, looking after it, but wearing it more. Wearing
it more and washing it less.
Yes.
Like we were throwing stuff into the wash, really thinking, like, and we've all been guilty of it. There's a tiny little mark and the whole thing goes into the wash, and actually you can spot clean stuff. It works very effectively on, you know, the heavier type of jersey that we have. And yeah, and the story of that item of clothing to you, and earlier we mentioned the ripple effect that has on you purchasing back. Who does that help? And I know there's been so many discussions in recent years about the decline of high streets, which is heartbreaking. And then you add the pandemic to it, and it becomes even more difficult for people. So conscious consumption and where you spend your money, I think, is one of the most important contributing factors you can make to helping restore communities and helping restore your local economy.
Yeah, that's a great place to finish. I think we're just coming up bang on 1/2 past. Yeah, because I mean that and everything, you know, that's got to be great when you've got a win-win situation like that. So, you know, we're reducing carbon. Sorry, apologies there, banging some buttons on the table. We're reducing carbon, but we're also helping the local economy, which, let's face it, we really need after this pandemic. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, say hello to all of us from Zero Waste Leeds and everyone watching, to Patrick as well.
Yes, I can literally hear him next door. He's on a call, but he knows he's very much knows what's been going on at Zero Waste Leeds, Zero Waste Fashion. Very passionate to talk to himself at one stage. He loves talking about.
Well, anytime as well. Tell him we'd love to talk to him anytime.
Super.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Great to see you both.
Can you just put your hands up again, because you've got the best. I love the cuffs on your shirt.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love this jumper. It appears a lot. I certainly am getting my wear out of this jumper.
Yeah, well,
you've got a dark one as well with your rainbow.
Yeah, with like it's lightning in a rainbow colours as well. That's my Supergirl jumper, you know, when you need a bit of something.
Yeah. Well, this is my kind of sensible. It's the long sleeved, it's the collarless navy dress from Community Clothing, you know, like one of those really great staples. So that's what I'm comfortable in as well today.
You can keep wearing all the time. Yeah, absolutely. So lovely to see you all. Take care, everyone. And we will be back. I think we're back. Is it Monday?
Yes, we're definitely back Monday.
We're talking with the RSA on Monday, aren't we, about the project that we've been doing around Leeds Fashion Futures.
Well, so next week is Leeds Fashion Futures week. So you'll see a lot about fashion from us for the whole of the week. And it'll also a little bit of an insight into where we go from here, because really Leeds Fashion Futures was opening up a conversation on a city level. We've learned a lot, we've met a lot of amazing people, and then that's a sort of plotting the future. But so there'll be lots of interesting things next week.
Yeah, including, I think we're doing a live Q&A next week as well, aren't we?
We are, yes.
I'm doing it.
And we've got a live skills and resources session. It's either Wednesday or Thursday evening, and people will be, so we've got the lovely Dawn from Fabrication, then they'll be actually sewing whilst the live Q&A is going on.
Yeah, and answering questions about how can we look after our clothes and how can we doing sewing and demonstrations and all sorts. So yeah, practical skills as well as information. So thanks everyone who was joining in and watching. We'll see you Monday. Take care everyone and have a lovely weekend, and thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.